When Emily, a struggling waitress, reluctantly agrees to marry an 80-year-old millionaire to save her family, she believes she's trading her freedom for their security. But 5 days later, she discovers a secret that changes everything. Welcome to our video. My name is Mark, and today I have an incredible story that will leave you amazed. But before we dive in, let me ask, where are you watching this from? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on the bell icon to never miss such engaging stories. The rain poured relentlessly, drumming against the small cafe's roof where Emily worked tirelessly as a waitress. At just 23 years old, she bore the weight of her family's survival on her slender shoulders. Her mother, bedridden from a chronic illness, required expensive medication, while her younger brother, Jake, had just started college with dreams of becoming an engineer. Bills stacked higher than her hope, and every passing day felt like a race she was losing. Emily wiped down the counter, her worn apron a testament to the endless hours she clocked at the cafe. It wasn't the life she had envisioned, but giving up wasn't an option. As the evening crowd trickled in, the door jingled, and a man entered, a presence that silenced the hum of conversation in the room. He was tall, impeccably dressed, with silver hair combed neatly back. Mr. Charles was a name whispered among the townsfolk. The reclusive 80-year-old businessman owned nearly half the town, his wealth a source of intrigue and envy. Emily's heart sank as he approached her counter, his piercing gaze settling on her like he had already made a decision. "Miss Emily," he began, his voice deep and measured. "I've been watching you." Emily blinked, unsure whether to feel flattered or alarmed. "I've seen your dedication to your family. It's admirable," he continued, sliding a pristine business card across the counter. "I have a proposition for you." She hesitated before picking up the card, noting the address of his mansion scribbled beneath his name. "What kind of proposition?" "I'd rather discuss it in private," he replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. That night, Emily confided in her best friend, Sarah, a lively and opinionated woman who had been her rock through countless storms. "Emily, this sounds strange," Sarah said, pacing the small living room they shared. "Why would a man like him take an interest in you? What does he want?" "I don't know," Emily replied, wringing her hands. "But if there's even a chance it could help Mom and Jake, I have to hear him out." The next day, Emily found herself standing before Mr. Charles's grand mansion, its towering gates a stark contrast to her humble life. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and wealth, the kind of opulence she had only seen in magazines. Mr. Charles wasted no time. "Marry me," he said bluntly, his expression unreadable. Emily froze. "Excuse me? I need a companion. Someone to manage my estate after I'm gone. In return, I'll ensure your family never struggles again. Medical bills, college tuition, living expenses, all covered." Emily's mind raced. The idea was preposterous. He was old enough to be her grandfather, and she barely knew him. Yet, the desperation in her heart whispered temptations she couldn't ignore. Over the next few days, Sarah became Emily's sounding board, her voice a mix of caution and disbelief. "This could ruin your life, Emily. What if he's dangerous?" Sarah argued. "But what choice do I have?" Emily countered, tears streaming down her face. "Jake's tuition is overdue. Mom's medication is running out. I can't keep doing this alone." On the fifth night, after hours of soul-searching, Emily made her decision. "I'll do it," she told Sarah, her voice trembling. The wedding was a quiet affair, held at the mansion's grand hall. As Emily walked down the aisle, she couldn't shake the unease creeping up her spine. The grandeur of the mansion seemed darker now, almost foreboding. During the reception, Emily noticed a door at the far end of the hallway, locked and heavily bolted. She caught Mr. Charles glancing at it several times, his expression unreadable. "What's behind that door?" Emily asked casually. His response was curt. "Some things are better left alone." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Her curiosity about the locked door grew, and as she lay in bed, she heard Mr. Charles's voice from his study. "It's time to reveal the truth," he murmured. But she must never know. Emily sat alone in her lavishly decorated bedroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The wedding was over, but the unease in her chest hadn't subsided. The ornate dress she wore and the diamond ring on her finger felt more like chains than symbols of celebration. The whispers she had overheard from Mr. Charles earlier that night echoed in her mind. It's time to reveal the truth, but she must never know. The mansion was eerily quiet, the grandeur doing little to comfort her. She decided to explore her new home, hoping to distract herself from her growing paranoia. As she wandered through the dimly lit hallways, she found herself drawn to the locked door she had noticed earlier. It stood at the far end of the west wing, bolted shut and surrounded by an aura of mystery. Some things are better left alone, Mr. Charles had said, but that only fueled her curiosity. Why was he so protective of this room? What could possibly be hidden behind it? The next morning, over breakfast, Emily decided to approach the subject again. Mr. Charles was seated at the head of the table, sipping tea and reading the newspaper, the epitome of calm. Mr. Charles, she began hesitantly, about the locked door in the west wing. Before she could finish, he folded the newspaper and fixed her with a sharp gaze. Emily, my dear, this house is now yours as much as it is mine. But I must insist that you respect certain boundaries. His tone was firm, almost cold, and the message was clear. No more questions. Emily nodded, feeling a mixture of frustration and fear. Later that day, she called Sarah, her only lifeline to the outside world. Emily, this is getting weird, Sarah said after hearing about the locked door. What if he's hiding something dangerous? You have to be careful. I know, Emily replied, pacing her room. But what can I do? He's already made it clear he doesn't want me snooping around. Then don't snoop, Sarah suggested. Investigate. Find another way to figure out what's going on. Sarah's words planted a seed of determination in Emily. That evening, while Mr. Charles was away on business, Emily began exploring the mansion in earnest. The house was filled with treasures, antique furniture, priceless paintings, and shelves of books that seemed older than time itself. In the library, she found something peculiar, a faint seam in the wall behind a row of bookshelves. Her heart raced as she pushed against it, revealing a hidden passageway. The air inside was damp and musty, the narrow corridor leading directly to the other side of the locked door. She stopped just short of opening it, her mind racing with possibilities. What if this is a mistake? What if I'm walking into something I can't handle? Her thoughts were interrupted by the distant sound of footsteps. Mr. Charles had returned. Panicking, Emily quickly retreated, making sure to close the passage behind her. That night, as she lay in bed, she replayed the events in her mind. The hidden passage confirmed that Mr. Charles wasn't telling her everything. What? And what could possibly be so important that he would go to such lengths to keep it hidden? The next morning, Emily made a decision. She would return to the passage when Mr. Charles wasn't home and find out the truth about the locked room. As she resolved to uncover the mystery, she found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a single note that read, "Don't go near the room. You're being watched." Emily stared at the note, her hands trembling. "Don't go near the room. You're being watched." The words felt like a warning and a threat all at once. Who could have sent it? Mr. Charles? Someone else in the mansion? She glanced around her room, half expecting to see eyes peering through the shadows. Sleep was impossible. She lay in bed, every creak of the floorboards and rustle of the wind making her heart race. Her resolve wavered, but her curiosity burned brighter. Whatever lay behind that door had to be significant, and now someone was desperate enough to scare her away. The next day, Emily decided to act normal. Over breakfast, she kept up the facade of a content, newlywed wife. Mr. Charles was unusually kind, even offering her a tour of the mansion's gardens. "You're adjusting well," he said as they walked. His tone was warm, but Emily could sense an underlying tension. "Yes, I am," she replied, forcing a smile. "It's quite the adjustment, but I'm grateful." They passed the West Wing during the tour, and Emily couldn't help but glance at the locked door. Mr. Charles noticed and stopped abruptly. "Emily," he said, his voice low and serious, "I've already told you, there are some things in this house that are better left alone. Please respect my wishes." She nodded quickly, hoping to avoid suspicion. But inside, her determination solidified. Whatever Mr. Charles was hiding, it was something he didn't want her, or anyone, to uncover. That evening, Emily decided to take matters into her own hands. Mr. Charles had gone out for dinner with business associates, and she had the house to herself. Grabbing a flashlight and her phone, she made her way to the library, heart pounding with each step. The hidden passageway was just as she had left it. The air inside was cold, the walls damp. She moved cautiously, the flashlight beam barely cutting through the darkness. The passage led directly to the other side of the locked door, as she had suspected. Reaching the door, Emily hesitated. Am I really ready to face whatever is behind this? She steeled herself and turned the handle. To her surprise, the door wasn't locked from this side. It opened with a quiet creak, revealing a dimly lit room. Inside, Emily was met with something she didn't expect. Rows of shelves lined with old photo albums, journals, and boxes labeled with names. A desk sat in the center of the room, its surface covered in yellowed papers and an open journal. Curiosity overcame fear as she stepped inside and picked up the journal. The entries were written in Mr. Charles's handwriting, recounting events from decades ago. But as she read further, her confusion grew. The entries weren't about business deals or personal achievements. They detailed a series of mysterious disappearances, people who had worked for Mr. Charles, neighbors who had visited the mansion, even his former housekeeper. Each entry described their last known whereabouts and the date they vanished. Emily's breath caught as she turned the page and saw a sketch. It was her face. Underneath, the words, Emily, the key to the truth. She stumbled back, her mind racing. What does this mean? Why is my name here? Before she could think further, she heard footsteps echoing from the passageway. Emily's heart raced as the footsteps grew louder, and the beam of a flashlight appeared in the corridor. Someone was coming. She quickly extinguished her own light and hid behind one of the shelves, clutching the journal. As the figure entered the room, she saw his face, and it wasn't Mr. Charles. Emily crouched behind the shelves, her heart pounding as the mysterious figure moved into the room. The beam of their flashlights swept over the rows of shelves and boxes, casting long, eerie shadows across the walls. Holding her breath, Emily strained to get a better look. The intruder wasn't Mr. Charles. It was a man in his late 30s, tall and lean, wearing dark clothes. His movements were deliberate, as though he knew exactly what he was looking for. Who's this? And why is he here? The man approached the desk and began rifling through the papers. Emily's mind raced. She clutched the journal she had taken, wondering if he was searching for it. Every instinct told her to stay hidden, but curiosity and fear battled within her. The man muttered under his breath as he searched. Where did he put it? He hissed. Emily's grip on the journal tightened. It's this. He's looking for this. The stranger paused, looking around the room as if sensing he wasn't alone. Emily shrank back further, her pulse thundering in her ears. Who's there? The man suddenly called out, his voice sharp. Emily froze, her mind screaming for her to stay silent. She hoped the shadows of the shelves would conceal her, but she knew it was only a matter of time before he found her. The man moved closer, his flashlight beam sweeping across the floor. It landed on the edge of her dress, peeking out from behind the shelf. There you are, he said, a smirk spreading across his face as he stepped closer. Emily didn't wait. Gripping the journal tightly, she bolted from her hiding spot and ran toward the door. The man lunged, trying to grab her arm, but she dodged him. Her adrenaline fueled her escape, and she sprinted down the passageway, the man's footsteps echoing behind her. As she reached the library, Emily slammed the hidden door shut and pushed the bookshelf back into place. She didn't stop to see if it held. Instead, she ran through the mansion, her mind racing. Back in her room, Emily locked the door and leaned against it, trying to catch her breath. Her hands shook as she opened the journal again, flipping to the sketch of her face. Beneath it, in faint writing, were the words, "The answers lie beneath." Beneath? Beneath what? Her thoughts were interrupted by a loud knock on her bedroom door. She froze. "Emily," came Mr. Charles's calm yet commanding voice, "open the door. We need to talk." Her blood ran cold. She glanced at the clock. He wasn't supposed to be home for hours. How much did he know? Emily hesitated, clutching the journal as the knocking grew louder. Could she trust him, or was this all part of his elaborate scheme? Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Whatever you do, don't open the door." Emily stared at the message on her phone. "Whatever you do, don't open the door." Her heart raced as Mr. Charles's knocking became more insistent. "Emily," his voice came again, now tinged with irritation, "open this door immediately. We need to discuss something very important." Torn between fear and desperation, Emily took a deep breath and replied through the door, "I need a moment." She needed time to think. Who had sent the message? And why were they warning her against opening the door? She glanced at the journal in her hand, her eyes falling on the cryptic phrase, "The answers lie beneath." Her instincts screamed that there was more to this mansion, and she was determined to find out. After a few tense minutes, the knocking stopped. Emily heard Mr. Charles's footsteps retreating down the hallway, but she knew she wasn't safe. She had to act quickly. Remembering the mansion's vast basement, she decided to investigate. Clutching a flashlight and the journal, she crept through the darkened hallways, careful to avoid making any noise. The basement door was heavy and creaked as she opened it, revealing a steep staircase descending into darkness. The air grew colder with each step. The flashlight's beam illuminated rows of wine racks, crates, and old furniture. But Emily wasn't here for antiques. She was searching for something hidden, something that connected to the cryptic message in the journal. As she moved deeper into the basement, she noticed a faint draft coming from behind a large cabinet. With considerable effort, she pushed it aside, revealing a narrow doorway. Her pulse quickened. The doorway led to a hidden tunnel, its walls lined with rough stone. Emily hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. The passage seemed endless, twisting and turning as if it were leading her farther from the mansion. Finally, she reached a large, metal door. It was locked, but a key hung on a nail nearby, almost as if someone had left it there for her. She inserted the key, and the door creaked open to reveal a dimly lit room. Inside, Emily found a shocking sight: rows of medical equipment, shelves lined with files, and photographs of people she didn't recognize. Her stomach churned as she realized these were records of individuals who had disappeared over the years. On a desk in the center of the room lay a file with her name on it. Hands trembling, Emily opened it. The file contained her medical records, a detailed account of her life, and, most disturbingly, notes about her blood type and genetic markers. Before she could fully process the information, a voice startled her. "So, you found it?" Emily spun around to see Mr. Charles standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Why are you doing this?" Emily demanded, clutching the file. "What is all this?" Mr. Charles sighed and stepped into the room. "You're special, Emily," he said, his voice calm but unnerving. "Your blood holds a unique property, something scientists have been searching for decades. That's why you're here." "Are you saying you married me for this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I married you to protect you," he said, his tone softening. "There are people who would do anything to get what you have. I wanted to keep you safe." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Safe? You locked me in a house full of secrets and lies. How is that safety?" Before he could answer, the man from the previous night appeared behind him, gun in hand. "She doesn't need your protection anymore, Charles," the man sneered. "We'll take it from here." Emily's world spun as she realized she was caught in a dangerous web of lies and manipulation. Just as the man raised his gun, the hidden door slammed shut behind them, locking all three inside the room. A voice over a hidden speaker echoed, "Now the real truth comes out." Emily's breath caught in her throat as the door slammed shut, locking her in the room with Mr. Charles and the armed man. The voice over the speaker was cold and deliberate, echoing in the enclosed space. "The time has come for all secrets to unravel. No one leaves this room until the truth is revealed." The man with the gun cursed under his breath, turning his weapon toward Mr. Charles. "You knew this was coming," he snarled. "You thought you could keep it all for yourself?" Emily pressed her back against the wall, her heart pounding. "What is happening?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Why am I even here?" Mr. Charles held up his hands, trying to calm the situation. "Emily," he said gently, ignoring the man's gun, "you deserve the truth. This isn't just about me or you. It's about a breakthrough that could save millions of lives." "What breakthrough?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with anger and fear. "You have a rare genetic anomaly," Mr. Charles explained, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and desperation. "Your blood has regenerative properties that no one else has. Scientists have been studying it in secret for years. That's why I brought you here, to protect you from people like him." The man laughed bitterly. "Protect her? Don't make me laugh. You're just as selfish as the rest of us. You married her to keep the discovery for yourself." Emily's knees nearly buckled under the weight of their words. "So this was never about love?" Mr. Charles hesitated, his face clouded with regret. "I didn't plan to fall for you. But I did." His words hung in the air, but Emily couldn't decide if they were genuine or another layer of manipulation. Before she could respond, the speaker crackled again. "This room is now locked for containment. A decision must be made. Emily's life could advance medical science by decades, but at what cost? Choose wisely." The room fell into stunned silence. The man with the gun sneered. "Looks like the game's up, Charles. She doesn't have a choice anymore." Emily clenched her fists. "You're talking about me as if I'm not even here," she snapped. "You're both monsters, using me like some experiment." Emily stepped forward, her fear giving way to anger. "If I'm so important, then I'm the one who decides what happens next," she said firmly. "And I'm not letting either of you control my life anymore." She scanned the room, her eyes landing on a hidden keypad near the desk. It seemed to be connected to the locking mechanism of the door. She rushed to it, ignoring the protests from both men. "Emily, wait," Mr. Charles pleaded. "Don't you dare," the other man shouted, raising his gun again. Ignoring them both, Emily entered the most obvious code she could think of, her own birth date. The keypad beeped, and the locks on the door clicked open. Before anyone could stop her, Emily grabbed the journal and dashed out of the room, slamming the door shut behind her. She locked it from the outside, trapping both men inside. Their shouts echoed behind her, but she didn't look back. She sprinted through the tunnel and up into the mansion, her mind racing. "I need to leave this place. Forever." Outside, dawn was breaking. Emily didn't stop until she reached the main gate. A cab was waiting. It seemed too convenient to be a coincidence. As she climbed in, the driver turned to her and said, "Someone paid for your escape. They said to tell you to run and never look back." She hesitated, clutching the journal. "Who sent you?" The driver simply shook his head. "All I know is, they wanted you safe." As the car sped away, Emily watched the mansion fade into the distance. Tears streamed down her face, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally breaking free. She didn't know what her future held, but one thing was certain: she would never allow herself to be anyone's pawn again. In her hands, the journal felt heavy, not just with secrets, but with the promise of something greater. She didn't know if she would ever reveal its contents to the world, but for now, she was content to simply have her freedom. As the car disappeared into the horizon, Emily vowed to rebuild her life on her own terms. No more lies, no more manipulation. Just her courage, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for joining this journey. Let me know how you feel about Emily's story.